It begins with something so simple: compassion, a word we hear often but rarely live. In the quiet corners of our lives, between the rush of deadlines, the noise of arguments, and the endless scroll of distraction, there lies a truth we've forgotten: that happiness is not found in what we take, but in what we give. Yet somewhere along the way, we began to confuse kindness with weakness. We hardened our edges to survive, mistaking detachment for strength. We learned to protect ourselves from pain, and in doing so, we built walls that kept joy out too. Imagine two people meeting in the middle of life's storm. One carries wounds so deep they've forgotten how to care. The other offers a single act of compassion. No expectation, no reward, just presence. And in that small, fragile moment, something shifts. Because compassion isn't soft. It's the greatest courage a human can hold. To feel, to forgive, to care in a world that numbs itself daily. So the question remains: if compassion is the path to happiness, for others, and for ourselves, why do we resist it so fiercely? Why do we fear the very thing that could heal us? We live in an age of unprecedented connection. Millions of faces a tap away, endless conversations one click apart. And yet, loneliness has never been louder. We send hearts, but forget how to feel them. We post smiles, but hide behind them. Our empathy has been digitized, efficient, filtered, and safe. Modern life has turned compassion into a performance. We share stories of suffering online, not to connect, but to be seen as caring. We use empathy as currency, traded for validation, likes, and fleeting approval. And still, our hearts grow quieter. It's strange, isn't it? We have more tools to express kindness than ever before, and yet fewer moments that truly move us. We speak of mental health, equality, and mindfulness, but in our private moments we retreat to the comfort of self. We scroll through pain instead of sitting with it. We sympathize without ever touching the wound. There's a paradox here. The more we try to shield ourselves from the suffering of others, the more we suffer in isolation. We think we're protecting our hearts, when in truth, we're starving them. Because compassion isn't about saving the world. It's about seeing it, raw, imperfect, and aching, and choosing to stay. In Japan, there's a word, amae. It describes the comfort of depending on another person's kindness without fear. But in our hyper-independent world, dependence feels dangerous, even shameful. We've been taught that strength means never needing anyone. But what if real strength is the opposite? The courage to be open, to care, to trust again. Look around. A nurse wipes sweat from a stranger's forehead. A man feeds pigeons at dawn because it reminds him that something still needs him. A child places her small hand on her grandmother's trembling one, and for a moment, time stops. These are the fragments of compassion that keep the human story alive. Not grand gestures, not hashtags, just presence. The quiet miracle of saying, "I see you." But the modern paradox deepens. The more we build systems to connect us, the further we drift from the pulse of humanity itself. We chase productivity, wealth, status, all while wondering why our hearts feel empty. Perhaps it's because happiness, stripped of compassion, is hollow. We are taught to chase pleasure and avoid pain, but compassion asks us to do the opposite, to meet pain with tenderness, to turn toward what hurts. It's uncomfortable, it's vulnerable, and yet it's the only path that leads us back to ourselves. Because when we soften, we don't just heal others, we heal the distance within us. So maybe the question isn't, how can I be happy? But rather, how can I love more, even when it hurts? At the heart of every human being lies an invisible thread, the desire to be understood, to be seen, to matter. This thread connects us all, quietly weaving our separate lives into one shared fabric of experience. And yet, most of us live as though that fabric doesn't exist. We've been taught that life is a competition, that survival depends on being faster, smarter, stronger than the rest. But the truth is simpler and far more profound. We don't survive because we compete. We survive because we care. Compassion is not a moral accessory. It's an evolutionary force. Long before civilization, before cities and languages, our ancestors endured not through isolation, but cooperation. They shared warmth, food, protection, not out of charity, but necessity. Because in the wild, the lone survive rarely, the connected endure. So why have we forgotten this truth? Why do we confuse compassion with sacrifice, as if to care for others is to lose ourselves? Maybe because somewhere along the line we replaced connection with transaction. We began measuring worth by gain, not by grace. And compassion, being immeasurable, unprofitable, was dismissed as naive. But think for a moment. When was the last time someone truly saw you? Without judgment, without agenda. Perhaps it was a friend who sat beside you in silence when words failed. A stranger who offered you a smile when you felt invisible. Or maybe it was you, extending forgiveness to yourself after years of guilt. That moment, that warmth you felt in your chest, that was compassion. It's not pity. It's not weakness. It's the recognition of shared humanity, the knowing that your pain is not foreign to me. In Buddhism, the Dalai Lama teaches that compassion is both the path and the destination of happiness. If you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. It sounds simple, almost too simple for a complicated world. But simplicity is where truth often hides. We think happiness comes from accumulation, more success, more validation, more love from others. But compassion turns this equation upside down. It says, give first, love first, understand first. And in doing so, you receive what you've been seeking all along. Not from others, but from within. Because compassion is a mirror. When you offer it, you see yourself. Not the polished version, but the raw, tender being underneath all your defenses. The one that aches, hopes, and yearns for connection. Science, too, confirms what ancient wisdom knew. Acts of compassion release oxytocin, the bonding hormone that calms our nervous system and lowers blood pressure. Even witnessing an act of kindness can reduce stress and increase emotional resilience. Our biology rewards us for caring. Because compassion isn't just spiritual, it's deeply physical. It keeps our hearts literally alive. But beyond the science lies something words struggle to contain. the quiet transformation compassion brings. It dissolves the illusion of separateness. When you help someone rise, a part of you rises too. When you forgive, you free yourself as much as the other. When you listen, you heal wounds unseen. The modern world sells us self-optimization. It tells us to become better, smarter, more productive. But compassion whispers a different truth. You don't need to be more. You just need to remember who you are. Because deep down, beneath all the noise, we are not strangers. We are reflections. And when one reflection shines, the whole mirror brightens. Imagine for a moment a society built not on competition, but compassion, where success is measured not by wealth, but by how gently we hold the world, where strength is not domination, but empathy, where leaders are those who serve, not those who demand. It sounds idealistic, maybe even impossible. But every revolution begins quietly, in one heart at a time. And perhaps that's how this one begins too. The paradox is clear. The more we open ourselves to the pain of others, the more peace we find within. Because compassion is not about fixing others. It's about dissolving the boundaries that keep us from seeing they were never broken. When the Dalai Lama smiles, it isn't because life is easy. It's because he has learned that happiness doesn't come from avoiding suffering. It comes from embracing it with love. And that's the hidden truth. The heart's greatest power is not its ability to beat, but its ability to break and keep loving anyway. So the next time you feel disconnected, look closer. The thread is still there, shimmering beneath the noise, waiting to be touched again. And maybe, just maybe, the world will begin to heal when we do. There once was a man named Elias, a craftsman who built clocks in a small, forgotten town. Every day he sat by the window of his workshop, surrounded by gears and springs, measuring time with absolute precision. To the townspeople, he was known as the man who could fix anything that ticked. But what no one knew was that Elias had stopped hearing his own heart long ago. He worked not out of joy, but out of habit. Each clock he repaired reminded him of the one thing he couldn't fix, the silence left behind when his wife passed away. She had been the warmth to his winter, the laughter in his quiet, and after she was gone, the ticking of his clocks became unbearable, a cruel reminder that time moves on, even when love does not. Years went by. Elias built hundreds of clocks, large ones for churches, small ones for children, delicate ones for lovers. But his own world grew smaller, dimmer, quieter. Until one evening, as he was closing shop, a small boy came in holding a broken pocket watch. "It was my father's," the boy said softly. "It doesn't tick anymore." Elias took the watch in his trembling hands. It was rusted, fragile, almost beyond repair. He turned it over carefully, noticing a faint engraving on the back. "To love is to keep time together." Something inside him stirred. He hadn't heard words like those in years. He spent the entire night working on that tiny watch, sanding, polishing, adjusting every piece. But no matter what he did, the mechanism refused to move. Frustrated, Elias laid the watch beside him and stared out the window. The moon hung low, silver light spilling across his workbench. And in that stillness, he He remembered how his wife used to say, "Time doesn't need to be perfect, Elias. It just needs to be shared." The next morning, when the boy returned, Elias admitted, "I'm sorry, son. I couldn't fix it." The boy smiled, a small, knowing smile, and said, "It's okay. You tried. That means it still matters." Then he left. But something changed in Elias after that moment. He began to notice things again. The sound of rain tapping against the roof, the laughter of children in the street, the warmth of sunlight spilling through dusty glass. He started greeting strangers. He repaired clocks without payment. He even reopened the small garden behind his workshop, a place his wife once tended with devotion. And one afternoon, as he sat there surrounded by blooming flowers, the broken watch on his bench suddenly began to tick. No one knew how. Perhaps it had never truly stopped. Perhaps it was Elias who had been frozen, waiting for compassion to wind him back to life. That night, he placed the watch in his window where it could be seen by passers-by, a gentle, golden pulse in the dark. People began to stop, watch, and smile. They said the light made them feel less alone. Elias never spoke of it. He just listened. Not to the clocks this time, but to the quiet rhythm returning to his heart. Because sometimes, compassion is not a grand gesture. It's the simple act of showing up, of letting someone else's story remind you that your own still beats. And in that way, compassion doesn't just repair the world, it repairs time itself. When we care, the moments stretch longer, softer, and the ticking becomes music again. So maybe the boy's father was right. To love is to keep time together. And perhaps that's all we're ever really doing, keeping time together. There's a moment in every life when the ticking stops, when the noise of ambition, pain, and memory fades, and we are left alone with the sound of our own heartbeat. That is where compassion begins. Not in the crowded world of applause and performance, but in the quiet recognition that we are all fragile, all fighting invisible battles, all longing for the same thing, to be seen and loved without condition. Elias's story isn't just his, it's ours. We too forget to listen. We too bury our tenderness beneath routines, deadlines, and fears of being misunderstood. We learn to armor ourselves against disappointment, to appear strong, unshaken. But compassion asks us to do something radical, to take off the armor. Because when we allow ourselves to feel, really feel, we rediscover the invisible current that runs between every human being. That current is the pulse of compassion. It's what makes a stranger stop to help another. It's what makes a parent stay awake all night beside a sick child. It's what allows forgiveness to bloom where anger once lived. And when that current flows freely, it changes everything. We start to see that compassion is not weakness. It's the quiet strength that holds the world together. Think of the people who shaped you. Not the ones who impressed you, but the ones who stayed. The teacher who believed in you when no one else did. The friend who listened without judgment. The loved one who saw your darkness and chose to stay anyway. They did not make you stronger by fixing your pain. They made you stronger by feeling it with you. That is the power of compassion. It dissolves distance. It heals without words. It bridges time, silence, and even death. Because compassion, in its purest form, is not about doing. It's about being with. In a world that rewards perfection, compassion reminds us that love is not about being flawless, but about being real. And when we dare to be real, to be kind when the world is cruel, to forgive when it's easier to hate, to stay soft when everything tells us to harden, that's when we become truly human. So maybe happiness isn't something we chase after at all. Maybe it's what appears when we stop running, turn around, and open our hands. Elias found it in the ticking of a small, mended watch. You might find it in a glance, a letter, a moment of stillness. But wherever it arrives, it always sounds the same, like time slowing down, like a heart remembering how to beat. And perhaps the simplest truth of all is this: we don't need more time. We just need more compassion within the time we have. There comes a day when we realize that happiness was never hiding in the distant future. It was waiting quietly inside the moments we rushed through. And in those moments, compassion was the light we kept overlooking. It's the gentle act of listening when someone needs to be heard. The patience to forgive, even when the world says you shouldn't. The courage to reach out first, without waiting to be understood. Compassion is the thread that ties all meaning together, and when we lose it, everything unravels. So pause, just for a breath. Ask yourself, who could you show compassion to today? Maybe it's someone you love. Maybe it's a stranger. Maybe it's you. Because self-compassion is where it all begins. You cannot pour from an empty heart. Forgive yourself for the moments you turned away, for the times you were too tired to care, for the days you forgot your own worth. Then begin again. Softer, slower, more awake. And as you move through this world, remember, every time you choose kindness over indifference, patience over pride, presence over escape, you are restoring something sacred. You are keeping time together. So, be gentle, be brave, be compassionate, for in doing so, you are not only healing others, you are healing the world within you. Signature quote: to love is to keep time together, one heartbeat, one act of compassion, one moment at a time.